I'm so excited to welcome my friend Kate Northrup to our show. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, thanks for having
Hi.
me.
Why, sure. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, you can see what I'm holding, which is Kate's new book baby called Do Less, a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for busy moms. And it's for working women as well.
Yeah, it's really for everybody, but you know how they are about taglines. Like they
I
want you to,
know.
it's,
Yes.
you know,
I'm creating mine
anyway,
now, and it's like you can't, and all the words you can't, you forget it. Anyway,
here we are.
moving on to what you decided, which is lovely. I love the idea of doing less. And you've been talking about this for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, because you sent me a mug. Thank you. That says do
Did I
less.
send you the mug? You were also there at Wanderlust Hollywood when I did my first ever talk about it.
Yeah, I sure was. And actually, just rewatched a different Wonderlust thing that was great about it. Because let's talk about this phenomenon before we get into the specifics, because I have so many questions. But let's get into this phenomenon that both of us are in the same, we're kind of in the same space that a lot of the people in our crew are high functioning, over functioning women. So whether you're a stay at home mom, you're doing everything right and doing all the things and being all the things, whether you're a CEO and a mom, whether you're simply a CEO, whether you just own your own business, the things that I think we have in common is doing too much and sort of being last on our own list, right? Like if we can check all the boxes and everyone else is okay, then we're okay. But ultimately, what you've discovered from a scientific standpoint and your own experience, which what I love so much about this book is that you becoming a mother. Now you have two daughters. This really inspired your ability to see what your bandwidth actually was and what was happening because you were doing too many things. So first, let's talk about what inspired you to write this book.
My first pregnancy and my first year of motherhood. It totally kicked my ass. I had never experienced anything in my life that I couldn't just get through by working harder or being smarter or learning a new skill set or like hiring somebody or reading a book. Like there was nothing I could do to make it better. And it was so hard. And my pregnancy was difficult with Penelope. I was just so tired. And during that time, I was working like less than half the amount that I had ever worked in my adult life. And yet my husband and I run our own company. So I didn't have paid maternity leave. He had no parental leave. There was no other financial scenario that was going to allow us to pay our expenses other than us keeping our business going. And so in that pregnancy and then that first year of motherhood, Penelope was a really sick kid and also a terrible sleeper. So she was waking up like every hour almost for the first year of her life. And we only had about 10 hours of childcare. And so with this suddenly pretty contracted amount of time and energy for our business, I assumed that our business would collapse, but I honestly didn't have the bandwidth to care because I was so tired. But
Right.
when we met with our accountant at around Penelope's first birthday, we realized our business had remained stable. And I was like, wait, what is going on right now? How is that possible? I mean, obviously I knew we weren't on the street. So like clearly, and we track our money, but there was that kind of moment of it all coming together. And I thought, well, that's fascinating. So if I could do so much less and get the same results by accident, what would happen if I looked back and did all those things I was doing on purpose?
Interesting. It's like the evidence was in your face and you're like, well, this is evidence that it is not only possible, but it happened.
Yeah.
That I did substantially less and remain consistent with the money. So this now speaks to limiting beliefs, and it speaks to sort of this belief of like, we have to do more to make more. And obviously your whole thing is in really doing less, but in a very mindful way, not just doing nothing, obviously.
Yes.
That not only can you be stable, but you can make more and you can be happier. So let's talk about the internal shifts that have happened since this new experiment of doing less?
Well, I remember talking to my friend Noah, who you also know, pretty
Mm-hmm.
soon after Penelope was born. And he was just like, so what, like, how's it going? Like, what are you doing? And I just said, Noah, I don't know how to describe it other than that my life just got really small, like really small. And a lot of moms that I've talked to talk about, especially if they were over producers and over functioners like you talk about. I love that word that I learned from you. That suddenly it feels like I felt like I wasn't doing anything, but I was never sitting around and I was so tired. And so the good news is if I was like, well, if I'm going to make it through this identity crisis, I need to reorganize what I think is a day well spent and get it that I'm keeping this human alive. I'm keeping myself alive. And that's good. So I think a lot of people talk about lowering their expectations with parenthood or with becoming a working parent. I really like to talk about it as changing our expectations, because I honestly think that keeping a human being alive that can't function on their own is not lowering your expectations. I think in many ways that's increasing your expectations of yourself. It's just that there's less to show for the day. And so I started to unravel the belief that the amount I produced during the day was equal to my value. Mm-hmm. And I started to more judge the value of my day based on how I felt and my degree of presence and how much love I was feeling.
All right, let's go back.
Okay.
Because I wonder how many people, if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening to it on the podcast, can identify with equating a successful day with what was produced, and really being super attached to our lists and checking things off those lists. But it's interesting, Vic is very much a producer type, my husband, who obviously you know well. And I remember after we got together and he would say, not a very productive day. I was like, but was it a good day? You laid in bed for 3 hours in the morning and fooled around with your wife. Isn't that doesn't that count for something? Like, it can't all be quantified with just checking shit off your to-do list. And yet I do understand that if you've been ambitious in your life, if you've been trained this way, we do think that way because we want to be successful. But there's also for me, it feels like a very fear-driven, if I allow myself to enjoy my day or a Sunday where I'm not working, or, if I have some time that I'm unplugged from tech, all of those things, that it's this fear of missing out. But it's more than that. It's not just FOMO. It's like fear of failing, fear of other things. So go ahead, you were saying.
Well, it's also like fear of becoming irrelevant, right? And I just think that there's this whole thing about associating our worth with our productivity, and we can't, like, that will end up. I'm so sorry. I have a small child knocking on my door, but she's going away now.
Okay. Hi, Penelope.
This is the working mama, right? Yep. So we have to, unless we want to end up, literally on our deathbeds, regretting the way we spent our time. And I talk about in the book, Bronnie Ware's book, The 5 Biggest Regrets of the Dying, which is so profound. One of the biggest regrets is I wish I hadn't worked so much. Like, no one is laying on their deathbed saying, I wish I had gotten more done.
Totally.
Nobody.
I always say that to clients, like, you're not going to be on your deathbed being like, I wish I fought with my spouse more. I wish I'd won more arguments.
Right. I wish I had been right more often, or proved that I was right more often. I wish I had controlled more stuff. Like, no, none of that is true. And so my husband recently got very ill in a quite dramatic way. And he's doing really good now. But it was this reckoning moment where, the timing couldn't have been more synchronistic in terms of that this book was about to come out about Do Less. And there I was with 2 small children, a company to run, and doing it, without my partner. because he was really only barely able to take care of himself, like not even that. And it really brought home how critical it is to focus on only what really matters and get rid of all of the extraneous stuff, the fights that don't matter, the things you're trying to control that don't matter. And so it's moving from focusing only on on doing to results. And results can mean a lot of different things. Results can mean sales and revenue, but results can also be feeling loved and feeling a sense of belonging and connection. So what's required is getting clear on what the results are that you want, and then what actions actually lead to those results.
Right on. And if anyone watching or listening is interested, because Mike's story is amazing. Kate and Mike have an awesome podcast that I've been on and that I love and that I listen to. I think it's called The Kate and Mike Show, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. That thank you for naming it that. But he really shares deeply his experience because he's such a can-do guy. And this is something that really, truly brought him to his knees. But the wisdom and the humility and the truth for him that came out of that. And again, it is so synchronistic, as I like to say, because it was so aligned with what you're saying in the book, right?
Yeah.
It really is.
It was such a forced practice. It was like, oh, really? Do you really believe all those things? And I was like, I guess I better practice. Shit.
Like, I hate when I have to walk my talk. It's so exhausting.
Oh.
So true. Can we talk about, though, the evidence-based stuff? Because there's so much science in this book, and you are referring to so many studies and other books and people. So what science was interesting to you when you started researching? And I know this is years in the making. So what are the things that made a difference to you when you found them out?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So what's so interesting about the data is that we have a belief that the only way to get better results is to put in more hours and more effort. The data actually proves the exact opposite. So we're just running around doing all this extra stuff, and there's no evidence that this is the case. And so if you are a parent and you're teaching your children that the only way to get success is to work more hours and put in like more and more and more effort, I just want you to know that you're wrong. The evidence, right. I'm Seriously. Saying this to myself as a parent, that the evidence proves the alternative. And so what's actually true is that the data is showing that after about 4 hours a day, 3 to 4 hours a day, we are not able to focus on anything that really moves the needle past that point. So if that's your client work, if that's working on content, writing a book, doing a presentation, whatever it is that's your like move the needle stuff, you're good for it for about 3 to 4 hours a day. And actually, they're also seeing that a work week of 6 hours a day is optimal because we're not able to focus for more than that. And so those extra hours are just totally wasted time. And companies like this Swedish company, Philemundus, so Sweden is actually moving towards a national 6-hour workday because they're so brilliant. Not surprisingly, the United States is not leading the charge.
Yeah, right.
For lining up our work days with what the data shows. But Sweden is. And this one company went down to a 6-hour workday. And what they found is that because people's hours were fewer, they just got more focused, and they weren't on social media. They didn't say yes to meetings that didn't need to happen. They didn't distract themselves by opening up another tab or starting another task. And so the same amount got done, but more importantly, they had less office conflicts, which saved a ton of time and energy. They had less sick days, which saved a ton of time and energy. And the bottom line was awesome, and everyone was happier. And when happier people show up at work, more gets done, and the ideas are better. So all of the data just shows that like working less and also taking breaks. We are what's shown is that the data shows that you work 52 minutes and take 17 minutes off, which, you can make it whatever you want, but basically to take a break at that first wave of fatigue, because otherwise, if you push past the fatigue, what ends up happening is that you distract yourself because your brain needs a break, and it will get the break whether you give it to it or it takes it.
That makes so much sense. And also I find that if I'm pushing, I definitely can see what you're saying is very true for me about having maybe 4 good hours of creating something, of being present, of not being distracted. And I get up early. So once, I'd say by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I know, listen, maybe I can answer some emails, but reality is that anything that actually requires my full brain is not going to happen at that point. And then you also find these external ways of getting that energy, of trying to create that focus. We have that the afternoon slump where everybody wants like a cappuccino or like a cookie or something. But again, if you're taking off the 17 minutes to walk around the block, be in nature, have some water, have a little snack, now you're actually consciously, like you said, with intention, optimizing the time that you will be working.
Yeah.
So makes sense.
And it makes sense. And then, because then when you actually are focused and doing your work, and I've noticed this myself, I get so much more done in so much less time when I do it at the right time of day. So for me, I'm a morning person too. I do really great work until about noon. And then the afternoon, I'm great for a conversation, but if it's just me and my thoughts, it's no good. And then my work day ends at 4 as well. And after that, like, that's it. And so what we can also do is begin to notice our own rhythms and what works for us in the energy of the day and in the energy of the month, and then schedule appropriately rather than thinking that somehow we should just get ourselves to be different, because we are brilliant the way we are, and we just need to support the way we actually are.
Right. But a lot of your work is about being aligned with our, what's it called? Like cycles.
Yeah. Like with our cycles, whether it's your menstrual cycle, whether it's your creative cycle, whether it's the moon cycle. I mean, there's cycles going on all around us. And unfortunately, we live in a culture that's taught us that everything's linear and we're supposed to be the same as we were yesterday, and ideally more energetic and more productive and more successful. And actually, as women, we're just not built that way. So it's not serving us to try to fit ourselves into a model that's actually not based on the lived experience of being female or being led by feminine energy.
Right. All right. So what would you say about, in the book, you talk about your productivity blueprint. So tell us a little bit about how people, obviously they should go out and buy the book, clearly. But give us a little bit of info on how do people find their own productivity blueprint? I'm assuming that it's personal.
It is personal. That's what's so fascinating about it. That's why I really, kind of have a bone to pick with the whole time management industry, that tells that some friggin' guy in his 20s in Silicon Valley is deciding how I should run my life as a mother of 2 children with a wildly different body and a wildly different life. And so we have to remember first and foremost that our ability to focus, our energy, our creativity is sourced from our bodies, because the amount of energy we have is based on our physical experience. So when we are working, we need to take our body into account. And I have a mantra, which is body first, business second. And when I attend to my body first, all the business that needs to happen gets done. And when I don't, my body takes me out. And it happens every time. And I'm pretty sure that was what my first pregnancy was about. It was a reckoning of just oh, really? You think you can just work harder to get through everything? Nope. Just can't. And so I have in the book a daily energy tracker that I recommend doing for 90 days. It's super simple. It takes 2 minutes at the end of the day, where you track which day of your cycle you're on, if you are cycling your menstrual cycle, and or the moon. I ironically, with the whole time I was developing this work, I was basically either pregnant or nursing. So I personally was not cycling, but I did this anyway because I tracked the moon. And the data actually shows that we are affected by the moon. So this is not woo-woo. There are more emergency room visits during the full moon. There are more accidents during the full moon. We are lunar creatures, especially if you're identifying with feminine energy. But so you do the daily energy tracker, and then notice there will be 4 seasons of your energy throughout the month. And actually throughout the day as well. More for men throughout the day, but for women as well a little bit. The seasons are obviously the same as the seasons. So there's the energy of springtime, new beginnings. There's the energy of summertime, full bloom. the energy of the fall, which is sort of like wrapping things up, turning within, and the energy of winter, which is rest and restoration and reflection. And so that energetic blueprint will lay over your month in some way, shape, or form. And then what's awesome is to start to schedule the types of tasks that are associated with the type of energy you're feeling at the time of the month. So I have a client, Darcy, she's so fun the way she's incorporated all of this. She needed to record a bunch of videos for a course. She recorded them all while she was ovulating because she knew that her brain was going to allow her to be the most verbal and the most fluent and the most out and magnetic. Then she had all this detail-oriented work to do. So she made what she called a luteal list. And she scheduled it all for her luteal phase of the cycle because she knew her brain would be oriented according to detail work. So really fun ways that now, of course, you can't schedule your whole life like this because life is unpredictable, but like 5% of your tasks would be great to start with. You know, the other day I know I need to have an editorial planning session. So I just looked at, well, when's the next time I'll be in the follicular phase of my cycle, which is the springtime, which is the part when my brain will be most excited about planning and brainstorming. So I scheduled it for that.
Amazing. And even if you're not, my feeling in actually reading the book is that even if you're not, like you said, it's not woo-woo. And even if you're not quote unquote into anything that's like mystical or even astrological, it's such straight information. And at being any human being, you know that you go through phases. You know that there are times in the day and in the year that you feel more detail oriented, you feel more blah or exhausted, you just want to rest, right? So I love the idea of basically tapping into what's already there and using it to your advantage. Because what I find, being a psychotherapist, what I find is that we make ourselves wrong all the time. There is a lot of heaviness and a lot of just self-loathing, self-doubt, self-recrimination. It's like everything, if we're not doing all of these things in the way of being like a superwoman, right? Doing it all and doing it all perfectly, that there can be this really heavy negative internal experience that really does suck the joy out of all the things, because it's not just, it's like you feel guilty you're not being the best mother you're supposed to be, or the best business owner you're supposed to be, and that doesn't work. And what I find in my practice is that no matter, because you could do that if you're very high functioning, reality is, listen, I did it for decades. You could really do that for a long time, but sooner or later, the chickens will come home to roost. There will be some reckoning. There will be some, for me, I got cancer. Oh, well, that was a wake up call. Like, okay, what you're doing, it's like you were saying about your pregnancy. Basically, the universe, I felt like probably had been tapping gently. And when I just balls to the wall ignored, the universe was like, well, now I'll pick you up and throw you down the cancer staircase, because now you must pay attention. And of course, that experience changed my life. And luckily, I'm physically well and no problems. But there's a reality that if it hadn't been super dramatic, for me personally, I was very addicted to being a workaholic and very, very interested in upward mobility. And I was so ambitious in my 20s that it was like all the ends, justified the means, as long as I would get to that place that I needed to go. Of course, I did eventually get there. And then I was like, oh shit, I don't feel the way I thought I was going to feel. Like I just killed myself for like 12 years to get to the top of the heap. And now I'm at the top of the heap. I have all the money. I have all the fancy clients. Wow. You know what? I'm not happy. Oh, so in light of all that, and I would say to my clients, I'm hoping to spare you a lot of that time spent. But what I find about the book is that it's the way that it's written is also incredibly accessible. So I like that the end of each chapter, there's something that you can do. You kind of got takeaways of like, okay, so here we are. One last thing I want to talk about before I let you go is about sleep.
I love talking about sleep.
Oh, yes. And you love sleeping.
I love sleep. So I talk about that sleep is my spiritual practice. Early on, I don't know, people don't ask me this so much anymore, although I did get asked it the other day. People would like ask me, what's your spiritual practice? Do you have a spiritual practice? And I am like a major minimalist when it comes to rituals and stuff. I just like less is more. And so I would always say sleep is my spiritual practice, because if I am not well rested, there's no way I can be tapped into my inner voice or God or spirit or be on purpose, be of service. Like I just can't. And so, now I have two small children. I don't get to wake up when I want to wake up. Sometimes I'm woken up in the middle of the night. So if you are in that place for whatever reason, maybe you have a sick dog or a sick parent, or, you're struggling in this area, I get it. I don't want to make you feel bad about yourself right now.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you are wearing your lack of sleep and your ability to get by without much sleep as a badge of honor, and you're celebrating that,
Right.
I would invite you to take a look at the fact that it's affecting your memory. It will actually adversely affect your relationships, your ability to respond to situations in a mindful, helpful way. It will affect your heart, your nervous system, every single aspect of your body and every single aspect of your life will be detrimentally harmed by not sleeping enough. And everybody needs a little bit of a different amount. 7 to 9 hours is the average. It'll be different at different times of your life. There's a lot of that data in the book. The sleep chapter was really fun to research because it felt like such affirmation of the fact that I've prioritized it for my whole life. I mean, I was the girl in college where my friends were going out and I went to bed at 10. I mean, I just have I would fall asleep on the stairs going upstairs when I was a baby, or like when I was a toddler. So I've always been into it. And I just love like that Ariana Huffington, for example, wrote The Sleep Revolution, that it's becoming much more mainstream to celebrate and prioritize sleep. Because if we really want to have more or achieve more by doing less, if we're well rested, everything is just so much easier and nothing seems like that big of a deal. And you're healthier and happier, more productive, more focused, more creative, all of that.
Yes. And it's interesting to see how lack of sleep impacts mood, impacts patience. Like, and there's specific ways that lack of sleep impacts us, but being short-tempered, lack of patience is probably what I've seen in my practice the most, where you literally walk around and just friggin' hate everyone. Just tourists in New York, you're like, if I could shove you in front of a train, I would right now. Like literally hating people because they're looking up at like the Empire State Building. You're like, all right, something's wrong with you that you have that much hate for a tourist. Like I might be talking about myself when I was living in the city. I might be, because I was definitely like up and going to the gym and not sleeping the way that I needed to. And only when I got sick did I really have my own wake up call. But even then it didn't really stick until I was older and I really felt the physical effects of not sleeping. And I was definitely one of those people who was like, oh, I get 5 hours a night, sometimes 6, that's plenty. Like as if that was plenty. It was, of course, not plenty then. And it's definitely not enough now. I mean, and honestly, I probably get 7.
Yeah.
Like on a good night, there are still many, many, many nights a month that I get less than 7, but between 6 and 7, which honestly is not enough. And I'm starting to prioritize sleep over even the gym and other things that I would never prioritize anything else over, because I can see getting sick more and I can see a direct correlation. So I really appreciated how much time, energy, and effort you put into that chapter, because I really do think that we need evidence. There's something about seeing it, because it takes a while when we have these ingrained thought patterns about what it means to be successful and what it means to be dutiful and what it means to be loyal. I was just talking with people in my Real Love Revolution group today, and someone was saying, I always associated working as being dutiful for my family because I make the most money in my family, and now I'm the breadwinner and I'm providing this lifestyle. And now that I'm really doing this deep diving into my unconscious and subconscious mind, I'm realizing that that's not really what my kids like. My kids need me present more than they need to like have a pony, right? Like I could make less money, have a different job, and be, and she kind of was feeling bad about it. And I was like, hey, that's what this is all about. You have the realization, and then you make a choice about how will I pivot at this moment? Because I do think we also can get addicted to being right or these beliefs or overworking. I mean, just workaholism is a real thing.
It is a
And
real thing.
it's so, even now, it's, if you say someone is a workaholic, it does not have this, it is not received the same way that if you say that they're an alcoholic or heroin addict.
Oh.
Nobody would put them in the same place. And yet, workaholism, there's a danger
Oh yeah.
to your life for doing that. So I am so in love with this book. How can people get it? I know that it's, by the time this airs, it's going to be out, right? So we're
Yeah,
doing it
it's
after.
out. So that's so exciting. As of today, when you're releasing this. So you
Yay.
can get it anywhere books are sold. I always like to give a shout out to independent bookstores. So if you happen to be able to shop at one, please do. And then also, once you get your book, whether it's on Amazon or there, whatever, you can go to katenorthup.com/book. And at that location, you'll be able to get a couple of great bonuses. One of them is a workshop on how to say no and set boundaries, which of course, I know you're all about that, Terry, and I give
Right
you a
on.
shout out in that workshop. So,
Oh, nice.
and then also one on how to apply the 80-20 rule to your life and business and your career. So how to get 80% more results through implementing the 20%, because we'll get 80% of our results from 20% of our work. And then, so you'll get all that stuff and some other things. So go to katenorthup.com/book.
Right. And so whether you're listening, whether you're watching, we'll have all of those links for you. And, this is a gift that you can give yourself. Just open your mind to what Kate has spent the last few years of her life researching and figuring out in her experiential real life. Like, it's not like these are not theoretical.
Nope.
This is stuff that's actually happened, because maybe you also could do less and have a happier life. I believe it is true. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. And I'm so excited for the world to get this little book baby, Do Less, a revolutionary approach to time and energy management for busy moms and working moms.
Thank you, Terry. I love you.
I do too.